I personally don't like to wait in a queue. I would always just sit down and wait for everyone to enter the plane, for example, and then enter myself because I already have a seat, so I am in no rush. But they like to, get things over with. They want to go through it 빨리빨리. 팅아, 저는 오스트리아에서 온 드라가입니다. 반갑습니다. I've always loved traveling all around the world. It's a big passion of mine. And when I first moved to Korea, that was actually one of my goals, is to be able to travel to different Asian countries. But unfortunately, because of Corona, that wasn't happening for a while. But now I can finally resume with all my traveling. Recently, I traveled to Vietnam with my Korean boyfriend. And we traveled all around the islands of Cat Ba and Han La Bay. And then we went to Hanoi, which is a very famous city. I don't think I can really choose one single country. I've been to so many different kinds of countries, which are good for different reasons, right? I've been to Sri Lanka, for example, which was incredible. It was like a whole different world. I've been to Cuba, which is where I found my passion for dancing salsa, for example. Of course, I love Korea. I absolutely adore the food. I love the people. So I love so many different countries. I don't think I can choose one. The reason why I chose to come to Korea was because I was already really, really interested in the culture, and I had some Korean friends, and I thought learning Korean would be a good choice because I always wanted to learn an Asian language, but Chinese is very difficult to learn, especially like all the different characters to be able to write. Japanese also has multiple writing systems. Korea definitely has the easiest one, right? I even learned to read and write in Hangul within a day, so I thought that Korea would definitely be the best choice when it comes to my first Asian language. Every year the ranking changes a little bit, right? Korea used to be maybe like a little bit lower last year, and now it's on second place. I don't know if this year it's number one, but it's one of the highest and strongest passports in the world, which is absolutely fantastic for Koreans who want to travel around. And I know that they can just travel to any country visa-free. There are so many good things about having a Korean passport. The fact that Korea has such a strong passport, I think is just due to the fact that Korea is becoming such a huge force in the world. Like their economy, the cultural aspect of Korea, all of it has a huge factor in Korea becoming such a strong passport holder. It just goes to show you how amazing, Korea is doing and is probably having a very good relationship globally and internationally with many countries. The fact is that Korea has very good diplomatic relations with a lot of countries around the world, and politically, economically, culturally, it's doing so well, right? And it's just developing and expanding and becoming a stronger force in the world. So I think that just, translates into how strong their passport is as well. Like, for example, when I went to Vietnam, I had to pay money and I had to go through administration and apply for a visa to actually be able to enter the country. Whereas Koreans can enter Vietnam, for example, for free and visa free. So those are moments where I'm like, I wish I don't have to go through all of this extra, process. I haven't traveled that much with other Korean people. So when my Korean friends came to visit Europe, they didn't need any visas to actually travel to Europe, which was quite nice. I think that a lot of countries don't have that privilege and they need to apply for visas to actually enter certain countries. When I used to have a Serbian passport, unfortunately, Serbia isn't part of the EU, so I couldn't travel as freely around many countries. I always needed to get visas to enter certain countries. I needed to pay a lot of money. I needed to go through a lot of administration, go to the embassies, and wait for a long time to be approved. I think there were times, for example, when I was in the UK immigration. So when you come to the UK, you have to get interrogated by an inspector, and that is at the border control. And they would ask you questions like, why are you here? When are you going back? Like, what is your reason for staying in the UK and things like that. And sometimes they would make you feel very uncomfortable, and you would even be scared. You would be like, oh, did I do something wrong? Why are they talking to me like this? So those are things that you experience if you have one of the visas that do not permit you to just go directly through the borders like automatically, because people from the EU just scan and just pass through. I had to get interrogated, and there were a lot of times where I felt very uncomfortable. So all of these things were always quite exhausting, considering that I was born and raised in Austria, and I was wishing to have a more easier way to travel around the world. I think Koreans are really, really lucky when it comes to having a Korean passport because they don't need to go through all of these troubles to travel. And of course, it's something that makes me very envious, when I used to have a Serbian passport, I just did not have that freedom. So obviously Koreans who have a passport, please use your privilege to just go around the world and explore, because not everyone can do that actually. Right now I have an Austrian passport, and fortunately Austria is also in the top 5 or something amongst strength. So I have definitely seen the difference in how I'm treated at border control. I don't get questioned as much. I don't need visas for so many countries, and my life has just become a lot easier. So I can imagine with Korean being even higher than Austria that traveling must be, very comfortable and very nice. At airports, when I see Koreans, I notice that usually they do like to travel in big groups. For example, I've seen, especially in Europe, I've seen big groups of Korean people traveling together, probably going with a tourist package or something like that. I've seen them like that, but what I've also noticed is that Koreans are very, well-mannered. They do not speak too loudly. They're always respecting all the rules and being very careful about everything. They have nunchi, So yeah, and then besides that, for example, people wait to board a plane. Koreans always line up already, and they're one of the first ones to wait in line, because Koreans are very used to queuing. I feel like they love queuing culture. Even if there's a famous restaurant, people like to stay and wait in line for a really long time. So I think that's something that I can notice also when people wait at the airport. I think it's really funny because I personally don't like to wait in a queue. I would always just sit down and wait for everyone to enter the plane, for example, and then enter myself, because I already have a seat, so I am in no rush. But they like to, get things over with. They want to go through it pali, so they just wait and are very patient when it comes to queuing, just so that they can get in and sit down and not have to worry about anything. I think Korean pali culture just has to do with how the society works in general, because Korea in general transformed so quickly over the past 70, 80 years. The people have to change with it very quickly too, right? So I think Koreans feel like they don't have time to waste. They have to get their work done. They have to do certain things. Even when they eat, they go and sit down at a restaurant. As soon as they're done with their last bite, they might still even be chewing. They'll be standing up and going to pay. So that's something I've always noticed. Europeans love to sit around when they're in a restaurant. We just sit down and we talk for hours. We have our starter, we have our main dish, we have our dessert, we have our little coffee at the end, things like that. We like to take our time. Whereas Koreans, they have things to do, right? So I completely understand that, yeah. So I actually quite enjoy that culture, the pali culture. I always am running from one place to another. I'm not someone who's very good at taking things slow. The only time where I like to take things slow is, for example, when I'm eating. So that's where there is a big difference. When I'm eating, I like to take a bit of time to digest before I stand up and pay for my meal. But the rest, I'm completely fine, going from one place to another, quickly. I'm always speed walking anywhere I go. So I feel like it matches well with Korean culture. 오늘은 제가 공항에서 있었던 일을 말했는데요. 영상이 재밌었다면 구독, 좋아요 눌러주세요. 안녕.